The thing you use to read the internet, the browser, has almost never been something you paid a penny for. And that's not because it's cheap to make. It's because somewhere, someone decided the browser wasn't the product. You were.
Straight for the throat, that.
Well, it's true. Every big battle over the browser has really been a battle over what the browser could point you toward. I'm Dana, and I'll be honest. I came into this thinking browsers were just, plumbing, boring pipes. I was completely wrong, and I'm delighted about it.
Mateo, and I'll be the one going, hang on, where's that figure from? All afternoon. Because half of what everyone knows about the browser wars is a bit polished up after the fact. I like a claim I can stand on.
Cormac here, and I'll tell you where I was for all this. I was the fellow with the beige tower in the corner, listening to the modem scream, watching a single photograph load one grey stripe at a time, top to bottom, and feeling like I touched the future.
The modem sound. I can hear it right now.
You'll never forget it. It's tattooed on the brain.
So if we're being careful, and I'd like us to be, the browser doesn't start with a war. It starts quiet in the early 90s with the idea of the web itself. Tim Berners-Lee at CERN, the physics lab, he builds the first browser and the first server, and crucially, he doesn't lock it down. The web gets put into the public domain, effectively given away.
And that given away part is doing enormous work, right? Because that decision shapes everything after.
It does. If he tried to own it, we'd likely be having a very different conversation, or none at all.
And think about what own it would even have meant. If every web page you wanted to publish had to pay a toll to one lab or one company, the whole thing would have stayed small, a gated garden for universities. Instead, it was a commons, and anyone could plant in it.
That's the underappreciated bit. The technical standards were open too. The language of a page, the address system. Nobody had to ask permission to build a browser or a website. That openness is what let 1,000 people try things at once.
But here's what people forget. That first web was text. Grey and blue and functional. The thing that lit the world on fire came a bit later with a browser called Mosaic out of a university in Illinois. And the magic trick, honestly, it put pictures on the same page as the words.
That sounds so small now.
It sounds like nothing, but before that, an image opened in a separate window, if at all. Mosaic said no, the picture sits in the text like a magazine. And suddenly your auntie could imagine using this thing. That's the leap.
And I'd underline that it was a design decision, not a technical inevitability. Someone chose to make it feel like a page you'd read, rather than a file you'd fetch. That choice is why the web felt human instead of clinical. And the people around Mosaic go off and start a company, the one that becomes Netscape. That's the moment the browser stops being a science project and starts being a business.
Which means someone has to answer the question Dana refused to think about for years. How do you make money on a thing you give away for free?
The question that eats the whole decade.
So Netscape shows up in the mid-90s, and it's a phenomenon. This is the browser everyone remembers if you were online then.
Netscape Navigator. And you did pay, sort of, in a fuzzy way. There was a version you were meant to buy, but loads of people just used it. It was everywhere. For a moment, that little company was the most exciting thing in technology, full stop.
And the stock market thought so too, didn't it? I remember hearing the Netscape share sale was this electric moment. A company that had barely made a profit, and the market went wild.
It was a genuine landmark, yes. I'd be careful with the exact numbers, but the gist is right. A young company with modest revenue and enormous excitement. That day's often pointed to as the starting gun for the whole dot-com frenzy. People suddenly believed the web was where the money would be. And this is where I want to be precise, because the story gets flattened into Microsoft crushed Netscape, and that skips the interesting bit. Microsoft at first nearly misses the internet entirely. There's this now famous internal turn where the company pivots hard and decides the web matters enormously.
And their weapon is Internet Explorer.
Their weapon is Internet Explorer, yes, but the real weapon is Windows. Because Microsoft's operating system was on the overwhelming majority of the world's computers, and they bundled the browser in. It's just there, free, present, no download.
And that's the kill shot, isn't it? Not that Explorer was better.
It wasn't early on.
It's that it was already sat on your machine. Why would your auntie go find Netscape when there's a perfectly good blue E winking at her from the desktop?
And remember, go find Netscape meant downloading it over one of those modems. A browser was a big file for the time. You'd start the download and go make a cup of tea and hope the line didn't drop.
2 cups of tea, and half the time it'd stall at 90% and break your heart. So the browser already sitting there wasn't just convenient. For a lot of people, it was the only realistic option.
Okay, this is the part where I have to raise my hand. Reportedly, because I always heard this described as an antitrust thing and I nod along, and if you stopped me and asked what exactly Microsoft did that was illegal, I'm not sure I could tell you. I think I've been bluffing on this for years.
Good. That's the honest question, and it's messier than the headline.
I'll admit it too. I always just said monopoly in a known voice and hoped nobody pressed.
See, we're all frauds together.
Right, let me rebuild it properly, because the distinction actually matters. Having a monopoly isn't illegal. Being the biggest, most popular thing, fine. What the US government argued in the case that runs at the end of the 90s is that Microsoft used its monopoly in one market, operating systems, to strong-arm a second market, browsers.
So it's the leaning, not the being big.
The claim was they made life hard for computer makers who wanted to offer Netscape, tied the browser so tightly to Windows you couldn't cleanly remove it, used their dominance as a lever. That's the alleged wrong. Not you won, but you won by pushing on something you weren't supposed to push on.
That's so much clearer, and genuinely, thank you, because I'd have kept nodding.
And here's the mechanism that made it bite. If you built and sold computers, you needed Windows on them. You had no choice, that's where the customers were. So if Microsoft made it a condition or strongly encouraged that you feature their browser and not the rivals, you were in a corner. You couldn't say no to the thing you depended on.
That's the leaning made concrete. It's not we're popular. It's you need this door, so play by our rules on the second thing too.
Precisely. And I'd only add carefully. The case went through rulings and appeals and eventually a settlement. The remedies were far softer than the early talk of breaking Microsoft up, so even the ending's less cinematic than people remember.
But by the time the lawyers are done, the fight in the ground is basically over. Explorer's won. Netscape's share just melts.
And here's the twist I love. Netscape loses, but before it dies, it does something that changes the whole story. It opens up its code.
It sets the source free, gives the recipe away, and out of that comes an organisation, Mozilla, and eventually, years later, patiently, a browser called Firefox.
And I think this is the genuinely underrated chapter, because after Explorer wins, there's a stretch where Microsoft basically stops. They've got the market, there's no rival, so the browser sits there barely improving for years. It stagnates.
Which is exactly what you'd predict, right? No competition, no reason to try.
It's the textbook outcome, and it's precisely why the eventual challenger matters. Firefox comes out of the wreckage in the mid-2000s, and it's genuinely better. Tabs done well, faster, respected your machine, blocked the pop-ups that were making the web miserable.
Oh, the pop-ups. People forget how bad it got. You'd click one window shut and three would breed. It was like whack-a-mole with your own computer. Firefox came along and just turned the taps off, and it spread by word of mouth. People literally telling their mates, download this, it's better.
And that stagnation had a real cost beyond annoyance, didn't it? If the leading browser isn't improving, then web pages can't improve either. They're stuck building for whatever that frozen browser understands.
That's the quiet damage, yes. The whole web moves at the speed of the dominant browser. When it froze, everyone building websites was held back with it. So Firefox wasn't just a nicer product, it was the thing that got the whole web moving forward again.
There was that whole grassroots feeling to it. Volunteers, a nonprofit, almost a cause.
It was a cause. There was a famous thing where fans clubbed together and paid for a newspaper advert to promote it. Regular people funding an ad for a free browser they didn't own. When does that ever happen?
Never. That never happens.
And it worked, up to a point. Firefox took a real chunk of the market back, which proves the thing the whole episode's circling. The browser was never really settled. It just looked settled during the stagnant years.
Okay, but we keep dancing around my opening question. Firefox is free. Mozilla's a non-profit. Where on earth does the money come from?
And this is the part that reframes everything. So let's go slow. Mozilla makes most of its money, the great majority, historically, from one thing: the search box.
The little box at the top, or the address bar, where you type your nonsense.
Right. When you type a search into that browser, it goes to a search engine. And a search engine, for years overwhelmingly Google, makes money from the ads it shows you. So Google pays the browser maker handsomely to be the default search, to be the one that box points at.
And that's the answer to my whole cold open. The browser isn't the product. The doorway is the product. Whoever owns where you go first owns the money.
That's it exactly. And once you see that, the entire modern browser landscape rearranges itself in front of you.
There's something almost dizzying about it, though. Google is paying the maker of a rival browser to keep sending searches its way. It's funding a competitor because the searches are worth more than the rivalry.
Which tells you where the real value sits. Not in owning the browser, in owning the search that the browser feeds. Google would rather pay to keep that pike pointed at itself than risk it pointing anywhere else.
Because now look at Chrome, Google's own browser, arrives late 2008, and people ask, why would Google build a browser? They don't sell it, they don't charge for it.
Because they don't want to rent the doorway. They want to own it.
They want to own the whole haul. If your business is search ads, the browser is the most valuable piece of property there is. It's the thing standing between the person and the search. You do not want that in a rival's hands.
And Chrome was also genuinely good, to be fair. Fast, clean, minimal. I don't want to be so cynical I pretend it won purely on strategy. It was a good tool. But the incentive to build it and to give it away is completely explained by the ads underneath.
And they pushed it hard too, a little prompt on Google's own search page, which nearly everyone visited, quietly suggesting you try Chrome. That's distribution again. The most visited page on earth, gently nudging you toward its own browser.
The Explorer trick, wearing new clothes.
Same lever, different hand on it. Distribution wins, over and over.
This is the thing I keep landing on. Every time you go, why is this free? The honest answer is, because something behind it isn't.
There's no such thing as a free browser. There's only a browser somebody else has a reason to pay for.
Now, there's a deeper layer here that I think is the most important thing most people never hear about. And Dana, stop me if I lose you, because I nearly lose myself.
I appreciate the warning. Go on.
Underneath every browser is an engine, Not the logo, not the buttons. The piece of software that actually takes the raw code of a web page and turns it into the thing you see. The layout, the colours, where the picture sits. That's the engine.
The bit doing the real labour.
And here's the point. Over the years, the number of independent engines has shrunk dramatically. Chrome runs on one that Google leads, and loads of other browsers you've heard of, the newer Microsoft one, Opera, Brave, and others, don't build their own engine anymore. They build on Google's.
Wait, so they're different browsers on the outside, but underneath...
Underneath, a huge share of them are the same engine, or very close to it, yes.
Okay, hold on. I want to make sure I've actually got this and I'm not just nodding again. The engine is the part that reads the web page and draws it. And most browsers now borrow the same one from Google. So the choice of browser is a bit like different cars. One factory built most of the motors.
That's a very good way to put it. Different bodywork, same engine block from the same supplier.
And I'll confess, I was quietly adrift back at Layout Engine, and I've only just climbed back aboard. That car version is what did it.
Cormac, I'm so glad it wasn't just me.
Never just you. Feels like there's two of us lost and one of us explaining today.
And honestly, that's why it's worth slowing down for. Because this is the part with real stakes. If nearly everyone's building on one engine, then the company that leads that engine has enormous quiet power over what the web can even do. Not through a browser war, through being the supplier everyone depends on.
Give me the concrete version of that power, though. What does it actually let them decide?
Suppose a new feature could be added to the web, some new capability for pages. If the leading engine decides to build it, it effectively arrives for most people at once. If it decides not to, that feature struggles to exist, no matter how many others want it. The web can only really do what the dominant engine agrees to do.
So one company holds the pen on what the web's even capable of becoming. That's a lot quieter than a lawsuit, and somehow more total.
That's a much subtler kind of dominance than the old one.
Far subtler. The Microsoft story was loud, lawsuits, headlines. This one's silent. There's no villain twirling a moustache. It's just engineering gravity. Building an engine from scratch is monstrously hard and expensive, so people sensibly reuse the good one that exists. And every sensible individual decision adds up to a web that leans on one company.
The two exceptions worth naming, so we're fair. Apple's Safari runs its own engine, and Firefox still keeps its own alive, which is a big reason people who care about this stuff root for Firefox even now. Not the browser so much as the independent engine underneath it.
So when you pick a browser, you might actually be voting on how many engines survive.
That's not overstating it. That's genuinely the stake.
Let's do the myths directly, because I think we've quietly busted a few, and I want them said out loud.
Go on, hit me.
Myth 1. The best browser wins.
Rarely. Early Explorer beat a better Netscape, because it came pre-installed. Distribution beats quality more often than anyone comfortable would like.
Myth 2. The browser wars ended. People say it like it's history. It never ended. It just went quiet and moved down a layer to the engine, to the default search deals. The war's still on. It just stopped shouting.
Myth 3. And this is my favorite because it's the one I believed, that a browser is neutral. Just a window. Just glass.
And it's never neutral. What's the default search? Which one's pre-installed on the phone in your pocket? What does it block? What does it allow? Every one of those is a choice someone made, usually with a business reason attached.
The phone one is huge, actually. Most people on Earth now meet the web through a phone, and the phone comes with a browser already chosen for you by Apple, by the phone maker. Most people never change it. The default is the destiny.
And I'd add a fourth, quietly, the myth that you're choosing it all. If the box is already ticked and the browser's already there and the search is already set, then most of the choosing happened before you ever touched the thing.
That's the sharpest one, honestly. The most powerful choice is the one made on your behalf, that you never noticed was a choice.
And there's a genuinely staggering number sitting under all this. One browser, Chrome, now holds something like 7 in 10 of all users worldwide.
I'd edge the exact figure. These market share numbers wobble depending on who's counting and how. But yes, roughly that order. A single browser used by the clear majority of humanity online.
From a world of one lab-built browser given away for free, to a genuine free-for-all, to one thing holding most of the room. That's a whole arc in 30-odd years.
And nobody ever paid for the winning ticket. So bring it home for me. 3 people who walked in thinking about pipes. What's the lesson we walk out with?
Mine's the boring, durable one, and I'll defend it. Follow the money and you understand the technology. Every time something valuable is free, ask what it's a doorway to. That single question predicted Chrome, explained Mozilla, made sense of the whole thing. The browser was never the product. Attention was.
And mine's the human side, because I lived a slice of it. All this vast machinery, engines, antitrust, billion-user market shares. It started with a bloke at a physics lab deciding to give something away instead of hoarding it. And a picture loading one grey stripe at a time, making a young fella in the corner feel the future arrive. The economics are enormous, but it moved because people were delighted.
And mine, the one I actually learned today, sitting right here, is that I don't quite follow is the most useful thing you can say in a room, because I said it about the antitrust bit and Matteo rebuilt it, and it turned out Cormac was lost too.
Hopelessly.
And the whole thing got clearer for everyone listening. The browser pretends to be simple glass, the web pretends to be free, and the most honest thing any of us can do is stop nodding and ask what's actually behind the glass.
Kunta landed it better.
And go change your default search while you're at it. Annoy somebody's business model.
On that small act of rebellion, thank you both. I met you strangers and I'm leaving genuinely fond of you. That's a good day.
Likewise, genuinely.
Grand company. Same modem noise next time.
Next time.
This episode was generated with AI by Demades.